Sweet. We are officially live. Welcome, everybody, to the Legendary Chiropractor Podcast. I am so stoked for tonight's episode. Last night, we got to sit down with Dr. Eric from SCED, who is a sponsor of the podcast as well. And now tonight, we're here with Dr. Gabriel Doty. Did I say that correctly?
You did, but
awesome.
I'm not a doctor. So
okay, yes. True. Okay, true. Good disclaimer. I'm so used to docs being like, hey, doc, how you doing, doc? How you doing, doc? But Gabriel Doty, he is here. He runs ChiroHD. He's the founder, the CEO, and operator behind ChiroHD and everything that goes on behind this EHR system and platform that we are going to get into nitty-gritty tonight. We're going to share everything from how it works, how to integrate it in your office, and really just everything that you need to know about the EHR space right now as it's kind of blowing up in the chiropractic world. It seems like the next cool thing to do is like, hey, start an EHR software company, like this is where we're at. But we're going to break down everything tonight with Gabriel. And I'm really excited. I'm going to let him share his story and how he got on this adventure and journey in the chiropractic realm and profession after we thank our initial sponsors here. Stay tuned, guys. To Inspire Women is the elite boutique coaching company for chiropractors who are looking to live life and run business in a way that is personal, unique, and authentic. They focus on business systems and money mindset mastery so you can pay down debt, be more profitable, and serve more people. Their goal is to empower you to achieve success by your own rules and your own definition. Head to toinspirewomen.com now because they know there's a better way. ChiroHD, superior cloud-based practice management software. ChiroHD is a user-friendly, all-in-one EHR solution built with one mission: to help you run your practice like a boss. Learn more at ChiroHD.com. Total Clinic Solutions is your go-to source for purchasing both brand new and refurbished chiropractic equipment, as well as phone support for repairs and maintenance. Call Derek and allow him to combine your wishes and his 23 years of chiropractic equipment expertise to find what's best for you and your patients at 704-622-4089 or head to TotalClinicSolutions.com now. It's time that chiropractors look beyond spinal alignments and measure the nerve connections that keep our patients feeling strong and performing at their peak. CLA designed the Insight scanning technologies to transform exams and generate powerful reports that give practitioners the certainty they have been searching for. Learn how CLA has partnered with practices around the world by going to insightcla.com. Spinal hygiene products are designed to educate your patients on the importance of lifetime spinal care. To learn more about how spinal hygiene products work and to download the patient education material for free, visit spinalhygiene.co. Again, that's spinalhygiene.co. Easily share your passion for chiropractic and look good doing it with Above Down Apparel, offering a premium lineup of principled apparel that's impossibly soft, sustainably sourced, and chiropractic AF. Visit abovedown.co and follow them on Instagram to learn more and score yourself some sweet chiro swag. SCED is the all-in-one system that allows for amazing control and flexibility of your scheduling. Yes, your next new hire. Every aspect of when and where you service your customers is at your command. SCED is tightly integrated with your existing EHR system. This software was made by a chiropractor specifically for chiropractic. No joke. Go check out their latest care plan feature by heading to go.sced.life/legendarypod. Health Business Builders covers every aspect of building a health business both online and in a brick and mortar environment. Dr. Dan Sullivan and Dr. Dave Toohill and their team will help you on a regular basis to develop an in-depth strategy, plan, and accountability to not only assemble a plan, but also make it happen. Head to healthbusinessbuilders.com so they can help you get the results you never thought were possible. Thank you for allowing this brief disruption to take place. And now back to the program. Oh man, this is awesome. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for being here on the Legendary Chiropractor podcast, Gabriel. I am so excited. Please share with us your story, your introduction to chiropractic, maybe even go back even to software and development of technology, really. So go for it.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks for having me on the show, and been listening for a while, and we're excited to be able to be a part of it. So thanks. I appreciate it a lot.
Absolutely.
So let me back up a little bit. Obviously, at the beginning, we talked to Dr. Gabriel. Obviously, I'm not a doctor. I am, however, married to a doctor, Dr. April Doty. She's in Roswell, has a practice over in Roswell, Georgia here. So we moved to Georgia in 2010 for her to attend Life University, and that kind of was my foray into chiropractic and in anything, so it wasn't ever really something that was part of our lives before. That's a whole other story I could go into for a while, but suffice it to say, chiropractic had a huge impact on our lives and our kids' lives. And when my wife saw the impact that it had on our kids' lives, she was like, I got to sign up for this. And we ended up moving cross country. We left Colorado and, we ended up in Georgia. At the time, I worked in software, so I've been in software for about 16 years. I primarily work in what we call front-end technologies that deals with what we call in the world user interface and user experience. Those two things are closely intertwined, but basically it's how you interact with a website, right? So everything that you do when you jump on a website, you go to QuickBooks, you go to your bank, and just the interactions that you have with it, that's kind of been my entire world. For the last 16 years. And so I originally started in hospitality industry. So primarily when I started working in software, what I would do is design those displays that you go to a hotel and you try to figure out how to get to your meeting room, and you got to walk up to that big TV and maybe you touch, interact it, tell it where, what meeting room you're looking for. So that was kind of my first, start in software. And then I've been doing that ever since and kind of gone through a few different roles. But when we moved to Atlanta, started working for a company called Amobi, who I still work for full time right now. So I'm director of engineering for Amobi. It's a large advertising technology company is probably the easiest way to get it out there. So, but yeah, so as far as the software piece goes, my wife started school. Obviously, now I get to start interacting with what she's doing in the school. We go to student clinic. I'm one of her first, patients that starts going in there. And, all I had to do was take one look at what they were using in student clinic. And I was like, what is this? And she was like, this is like the state of the art. This is the best stuff out there. And this is, and it was right then that I had the idea. I was like, hey, it's time. If this is the best that's out there, we need to figure out something different. And so that's kind of where the idea started and where the vision started for it. But it's taken a few years for some of the pieces that we wanted to see come into play for technology over the last 5 or 6 years to kind of solidify before we could build ChiroHD the way that we wanted to. And so a lot of that's really just started to firm up over the last 2 years, which has really let us build what we have built up to now.
That's awesome. I love your story. Yeah, you walked in a student clinic and this ain't gonna do. No, that's awesome. And I know Dr. April went to Life and I go to Life right now, and we've been through several EHR systems because a lot of times with a school so large and it being the largest chiro school in the world, it's like a lot of the servers can't handle that many people on at one time, completing notes, trying to find files and everything like that. So I know they've had quite the struggle, and we actually have just come into another EHR upgrade or changeover in the Life University clinics, which is pretty crazy to think about. But without further ado, I want to tell everybody watching and listening and listening to this later and watching this later that Gabriel and ChiroHD are incredible sponsors of the Legendary Chiropractor podcast. I'm honored and humbled to work with you guys and to support what you guys are doing for chiropractic, because I went to go visit for a school project, actually, Dr. April's office, and I was like, man, it's flowing really well in here, right? Like, and she's like, oh, that's, we got solid EHR, and then her CA, and I forget her name, but her CA was like, you know, you got to check this out. And she ran me through like how to schedule people and how payments are done, how insurance is billed. And I was like, man, this stuff is legit, you know? And so it was just so smooth. And that's something that we talked about last night, with Dr. Eric and Sked, was like the efficiency of ChiroHD was really what, you know, sold me on it. It was like, yeah, that's what it is, you know, and it's making the experience, when the efficiency is there, the experience in the office is so much better, and you're able to do so much more with a patient when you're able to, you know, not have to worry about what's going on with the scheduling or what's going on with the billing, and it's all just super easy and right there in front of you. So yeah, I want to jump in. I wanted to just throw that out there quick, but I want to jump into the topics, and I just want to bullet list them. And if you have something to say before we get going here, I want you to do that. But number one, we're going to talk about why chiropractic, the whole entire profession, needs another EHR system. Because I know a lot of people out there, you know, we talked about it at the beginning before we thanked our initial sponsors of like, you know, how many EHR systems are we going to add to chiropractic? And, you know, it's going to be like a grocery store soon of like, how many do you pick from and who do you go with? Who do you trust and all that stuff? So we're going to break down all those barriers tonight for ChiroHD. And then the vision really for your company and where it's going, not only in chiropractic, but also like the long-term research that you guys are doing when it comes to analyzing all of the data that you're collecting. And then how software like EHR and ChiroHD plays a huge part, like I just touched on, in your chiropractic practice. So, Gabriel, do you have anything to say before we dive into any of those topics?
No, I'm excited. Let's jump into it.
Awesome. Let's do it. So why do chiropractors and chiropractic practices as a profession, why do we need another EHR system? What is the point?
Right. So there's a lot to unpack on that question. I've kind of alluded to it just in my story of what inspired ChiroHD, right? But some big things that are happening, and you as a student and young people coming into the profession, you guys are used to a certain standard of, I mean, you've spent your entire life on phones and you know, your world's view of the internet and software is completely different than the paradigm that most of the current software companies were created in, right? So a couple of the biggest current softwares out there were written in a language that was officially marked end of life 9 years ago, right? So it's not a language that's even supported anymore. It's outdated. It you know, it had its place for sure, and it continues to have a good place. And one beautiful thing I kind of like to think about where we're at in this industry. Kind of, if you look back a little bit to early transportation in the United States, when we went from railroads and trains and all this stuff, and now we're starting to upgrade to cars and planes, and that entire paradigm shift really changed things. But it came with a lot of problems too, because you know, you're used to moving 400 or 500 people at a time over long distances. You introduce a car, and it's like, well, yeah, it's better, but you know, now we've got to manufacture 500 cars to transport the same number of people, and it's not as efficient. You know, so there's things about it that there's some fantastic, great use cases for trains, and they have their place and their purpose, but there's a very different thing happening at the same time. And so I think that chiropractic software in general has been behind the times, and it's not just chiropractic. Honestly, it's any smaller industry that's not, you know, multi-billion-dollar industries, right? So I like I said, I'm in the advertising market. Advertising, guess what? They get new technology all the time. We switch every single time there's something that happens. They're right on it, because they've got to stay cutting edge if they want to be, you know, if they want to be anything. So It's a very different world when you have an established system that's been around for a while. It works well. There's not any major hiccups. It's been proven over many, many years. So it's a very different thing. And so when those systems happen, by default, you end up with a lag, where you just kind of lag behind the times, because no one's really wanting to switch. Switching EHRs is a pain in the, you know, it is just a huge problem switching, because it's not fun for anyone. No one wants to do it, and so you end up with just this natural lag that happens with software. But we're getting to the point now where that lag is starting to really show, right? So especially with younger and younger people coming out that have grown up in a very different world, so they're used to Facebook and the, you know, modern internet era, we call it, and then they jump on one of these other systems that was, you know, designed 15 years ago, and instantly they look at it and they're just like, I have no idea what to do with this, right? And so that's a huge piece, is trying to bring modern to it. And you mentioned earlier that there's, you know, lots of different EHRs starting to come out. There's a few big ones in the works. There's been a couple of ones that have come out in the last few years, and they're all trying to take a piece of what we're seeing. Like everyone sees the same thing, and so that's why all of a sudden there's everything's starting to pop up because everyone sees it. But I think kind of the holy grail of where we're going is cloud-based. It's a big buzzword right now, right? So you've got a lot of companies that are existing that talk about, oh, we're moving to cloud-based, or you've got new ones that come out and say we are cloud-based, or you might hear like buzzwords like hybrid cloud, and there's like all this stuff around this cloud-based.
There's so
computing.
many clouds. There's so many clouds.
There's so many clouds. It's going back to Super Mario era. But when we're talking about that, like a lot of people don't even know what that means, right? Like what is cloud-based? Why do I care about cloud-based? Why does it matter to me? Why does it matter to my practice? And so like there's some really practical things there. So just getting into just very, very straightforward things. Like so we're not just cloud-based, we are browser-based. So our platform runs in Google Chrome. Exclusively right now. Eventually we'll expand to other things, but we're Google Chrome specific. And so that means any device that runs Google Chrome and has an internet connection can access our software from anywhere. So you're from your phone, from a tablet, you're on an airplane. I was traveling this past week and I was still working and checking things and working on the system. I'm in an airplane that has Wi-Fi, and now I can work on the software. And so when I say cloud-based, that's what I mean. I mean browser-based. You don't have to install anything on your computer. You don't have to do any of that. There's a few other ones. Hybrid cloud is another big buzzword if you've heard it. And basically that means that you install a program on your computer, but the data is stored, it's stored in the cloud. You don't. Mm-hmm. So you still have to install a program. You still have limitations on it being, it comes from, or it's Windows based versus Mac. You might have to download. A lot of times these companies don't support Mac and PC. So you have to pick one or the other. A lot of times, if it's that kind of software, there's very limited support for tablets, things like that. And so, but back to your earlier point, it's the entire generation that's coming into chiropractic is used to just using the internet and accessing applications on the internet. Mm-hmm. And so that's a huge part of what we want to continue to cater to. So that's step number one. Step number two, or the second piece of it that I'll talk about, but I'm going to just glance on it right now because it ties into the second major bullet point. But the other piece is access to data, right? So one big thing from our perspective is when you have all these servers distributed across offices, so you're running another system and it requires you to have a server in your office, getting access to that data and analyzing it in a meaningful and effective way is extremely difficult. And so by bringing all that data into a single place where we can analyze it differently, then that makes a huge difference in some of the areas we'll talk about in a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wrote down a bunch of stuff because I love, this is why I do this podcast, is because I love learning. And so I love bringing this, not only through technology like we're on right now, Facebook Live, like how amazing is this? And, when you and I sat down tonight, I called you and I was like, nice to meet you. Like this is where, and you were like, I spend, 90% of my time in virtual meetings, with the hotel stuff and, now with ChiroHD and everything. And this is where the times are going and where the times have gone. And so we are constantly playing catch up. Not only, like you said, in the chiropractic profession, but in our everyday lives, right? A new app comes out, a new phone comes out, a new headphones. It doesn't matter what it is. We're always increasing speed and then, increasing the amount of data that's put in front of us on a daily, or on a second basis, right? Like, so in the matter of seconds, we can pull up anything we want in the world, which is nuts. So that brings me to my point of like, what you said, you nailed it right on the nose, is like, for me coming out of school, I'm looking for something as a software, right? For EHR, to store my medical records, I'm looking for something that's easily accessible, that looks really, really nice, right? And something that doesn't lag when it scrolls and doesn't, lag when I go to, schedule an appointment and all this stuff, because I'm so used to that type of technology that, like you said, we have to be stepping up the game, and that's exactly what ChiroHD is doing. So that's really, really cool to hear. And for me personally, and for new docs coming out, all my Chiro students watching this, I mean, this is where it's at. This is where the ball is going, and ChiroHD is literally riding the ball to that. So it's pretty amazing. And then you mentioned cloud-based, and we joked about, how many clouds are there? We're going back to Mario, and just like this is the life. But cloud-based, browser-based, that's all fascinating stuff. Because I don't think a lot of docs think about the back end of it too often. They're just like, does it look nice? Does it do what I want it to do? Or even just, does it do what I want it to do, kind of thing. And then they, install it, and they look at prices, and they price evaluate everything, and it's like, what's the cheapest? What's the best? Here, we're going with this. And that's exactly. And we got to move away from that model of thinking, in my opinion. And because it's like you are cloud-based with EHR records, but you're also browser-based, as in there's no disk that you're putting into a computer. There's nothing like that. And we can go all the way back to a floppy disk if you really wanted to.
Gotcha. I hope we never. No.
But that's super, super cool that it's browser-based. I wasn't aware of that before you mentioned that, and I don't think a lot of people were, unless those that are using your software, probably are. But that's really awesome. And I want to talk, before we go on to the next bullet here, and the next topic is, we talk about this as being, what are new docs expecting? What do new docs want? Here's the question, is this for new docs and docs who have been out 20, 30, 40 years? Talk to us about what that integration looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. So, new docs, absolutely, right? So that's, we've talked a little bit, offline and had this conversation, but, our primary market that we are really appealing to and wanting to make sure that we're chasing and thinking about is the generation coming out, right?
Mm-hmm.
The next generation of chiropractors, and making sure that we're filling that niche that we feel isn't really being met right now, right? So that's huge, and that's everything that we're catering things towards. But that being said, we are definitely wanting to appeal to the entire market. But I will say, just like I mentioned to you earlier, that there are barriers, right? If you've been open for 20 years, the idea of migrating your data into another platform is it's horrible. There's no way around it. And honestly, I wish I could say it's super easy with ChiroHD, but it's horrible no matter what, right? Mm-hmm. So it's just you take all that data in a way that was it's processed differently, it's stored differently, it's in a completely different format. And sometimes we can migrate some data, sometimes we can't. It just depends a lot on the capabilities of the system that it was in and what capabilities they give you to get it out.
Right.
So that just depends a lot on what your current system is and what that looks like. But this is, at the same time, this isn't a new problem, right? People have switched for a long time between companies, and people are used to that process, which generally means you pick a date, you switch over, and you start you keep the old system for a while you kind of have this back and forth. And we know that's not ideal, but there are limitations in terms of data format and things in terms of switching between systems. That's just problematic. But in terms of systems and learning how to use it and being able to run your practice and things like that, absolutely. If you're 20 years in, we can still, meet that need and improve the flow and the workflow of your practice for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just, like I said, I wanted to cover that because I know your target market or your ideal client would be, the new graduates in this next generation coming up. But also, for those docs who have been in practice and are like, you know what, I think it's about time, it's about time. And I just want them to be able to make the right decision in that transition period where it's like, okay, this is, it is going to stink, but at the end, because there will be eventually an end, it'll be worth it, right? And that's what it's all about, because you don't want to switch over and then you're going through all the same struggles and, you have none of the services that you thought you were going to get and you don't have it now, and it's just, that would be a mess. So I want to make sure that people who are switching make sure they do that correctly. And so how does, I know, so now we know it integrates with new and old practices. Talk to us about that integration process, though. Like, what happens since it is browser-based? What happens? Do we hop on a call? Do we, get an email with a link to go somewhere? Like, how does that look?
Yeah, so I will say, just backing up about where we are at as a company right now,
Yeah.
right? So we're just eking into the actual available for general audience, right? So we're closing out our beta phase. We'll probably have an official launch sometime beginning of next year, but we're still obviously bringing on new clients right now. But those conversations are very one-off. We're talking to people. We're spending a lot of time with them. We're doing a lot of training. We're making sure that, like you said, like that transition is smooth, that they have the proper expectations about where we're at as a company, what our feature calendar looks like, when we're going to release certain features. So there's a long process for that. Mm-hmm. So that process right now is very hands-on. As we grow and as things become more widely available, it's going to be like every other thing that you sign up for online. Is you'll be able to, you like our site, you go there. We're working on a full video library in terms of how to walk through everything, frequently asked questions, introduction videos. We'll always be available to jump on a call, do a sales call, answer questions. But we want it to be very hands-free from our perspective. We want you to be able to go to our website, find all the information that you need, sign up, and start using it right then and there. Mm-hmm. Right. So you don't have to wait 2 days while we set up your office and do all those things. We just you turn it on, you're ready to rock and roll. And so I by the time that we're saying we're generally available, January next year, it will be that process where you'll just be able to go to our site, sign up, and start using it right there.
Awesome. And do you mean January 2020 or January 2021?
2020.
Awesome. That's so exciting. Cool. I wasn't sure because I'm like, we're right at that transition period into the new year. It's like, I don't know if we're talking, another year from now.
No. January 2020. I hope to God it's not another year.
Very, very cool. Very cool. So let's hop into, I want to quickly, before we go on to the next topic, because we got a lot more to discuss, Gabriel. I'm super excited. This conversation is going very, very great. And I hope that people are enjoying it. If you're enjoying this, like it, love it, comment, ask questions. Gabriel, before we hopped on, he was asking if you guys, if people wanted to ask questions. If you have any questions that I don't bring up personally, just throw them in the comments. I get the comments and I can get those over on the live feed here for Gabriel to answer. So with that being said, I want to thank our next set of sponsors here, and then we'll get back to the rest of the topics. Every chiropractic clinic needs a compliance program. If you are not sure what that includes or why you need one, let Dr. Robin from RHDC Consulting help you build your chiropractic compliance. If you are ready to get started, head to robin-hale.mykajabi.com and let Dr. Robin guide you to the end result. Imaging Services' primary business is chiropractic solutions. With over 45 years in the industry of helping chiropractors, Michael Tokash offers free consultations on building your business. In the past year, Imaging Services has installed over 100 X-ray machines and digital X-ray systems in over 42 states across the United States. For more, head to theimagingservices.com. The 56-day chiropractic boot camp, building badass female chiropractors who are instinctively successful. Head to 56daychirobootcamp.com/legendary for your free endless referrals cheat sheet now. Thank you for allowing this brief disruption to take place. And now back to the program. Oh, thank you to those sponsors. So here's a short, quick story while I get everything back on the screen for us. Going into the next topics here, here's a quick story for you. When you're in, podcasting and all of this stuff, it's really kind of an interesting field nowadays. While we're talking about technology, it's like everyone seems to have a podcast and this is the thing to do. But it's really cool to be able to reach out to people like Gabriel, like ChiroHD, and like all of these other sponsors that are on this show. And when they are like, yes, we're all in, we see your mission, we see your vision, we see your passion, That speaks volumes to me, and I'm always, always, always humbled and honored to be surrounded by such great people in this profession. So thank you all for doing that for us. So Gabriel, as we go into this next topic here, the vision for ChiroHD and long-term research. What does that mean, first of all? And then we'll talk like what does the research mean, and then let's get into like the true vision and nitty-gritty behind ChiroHD for us.
Yeah, and this is my favorite topic, right? So this is what it's all about to me, right? So this is why we built ChiroHD. This is the part that I could spend the next 2 hours going on it. So it's going to be hard to condense my excitement on these things, but it is probably the most important thing to me, right? So taking a step back, you look at a lot of these other EHRs and or any EHR that's been out there, not just in chiropractic. We're talking about medical. We're talking about everything. And they've all got some big fundamental problems that are still being addressed and trying to figure out how to do things. A good example of that is your typical SOAP note. And again, I'm going to label all EHR. So we're talking medical, everything is at the end of a good SOAP note, you still have you don't have anything to measure in terms of when we talk about data and analytics and things like that. My entire world is advertising, right? And so when we're looking at advertising, we're looking for data points, right? So when you are served an ad on Facebook and it's that creepy ad that you were just you were on some shoe site 5 minutes earlier, and now all of a sudden Facebook's trying to sell you the same shoe at a 20% discount. That all happens because of data points, right? So what happens is when you go to that site, there's little pieces of you that are tracked and are assigned to your profile. It's without getting into all the details of it. Your digital profile has thousands of data points about who you are as a person and all the things, right? And so those advertising companies can make split-second decisions about how well you fit their mold of what they want. And there's actually a really fascinating system that I won't get into too much, but there's actually a live auction that happens for your advertising. Like when you're on Facebook, your profile is sent out to an auction, a digital auction store, where thousands of advertisers make bids based on your profile in a hundredth of a second. And based on who wins that bid is how those ads are served up and decided. And so, but when we talk about big data and we talk about analytics, data points are super important, right? Like you have to be able to check that box that says this person likes this and they don't like this. And when you talk about how medical stuff is done in terms of SOAP notes and tracking and things like that, it is horribly inefficient in tracking data points. So you take a SOAP note, you talk about the patient's pain scale, you talk about what they, whether they feel good, bad, or better, and you kind of go through all these things, and then you type them into a narrative, and you put it in a box that's text. And again, without going into crazy technology stuff, parsing text to figure out what text means is nearly impossible. Like, so me combing through a million SOAP notes to figure out if patients are receiving better care, or improving, or getting worse is impossible. Mm-hmm. And so at some point you have to start analyzing that data or gathering data points that are actually meaningful from a long-term analytical basis, right? Is that too heady, or is that?
No, this is great. This is great.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, there's a lot of pieces to that. And so as we, one of our stated goals is to find ways to start getting access to that data without any overhead to you, right? So a lot of times when you talk about SOAP notes, the reason why they are what they are and why you have macro systems and SOAP note builders and things like that is because of efficiency of an office. Like if you had to take an hour to do every single SOAP note, you're not going to be able to run the practice that you want. Mm-hmm. But then on the flip side, taking a really accurate note that reflects exactly what happened and actually, gives proper things on every single visit is extremely difficult to do from a software perspective. And so that's a huge stated goal of what we're doing. And we're making steps in that direction. I don't think that we're there now, but I will say that is a stated goal of the company, is to continue to improve that process so that when a patient comes in, you can still take a 30-second to 3-minute SOAP note and have it be extremely accurate, mm-hmm. that at the end of it, the data that's recorded is a very accurate reflection of what happened, what their pain was, what their improvements were, how they were feeling that day, their subjective. All that information is captured in a super effective way where now we can actually take that data and do something meaningful with it.
Yeah.
And so that's something that we are actively and always looking at working on. But so the reason for that and why this becomes super exciting for me and why I'm doing what I'm doing with ChiroHD is that when you take that kind of data and you combine it with cloud-based technology and machine learning and all the stuff that's available to these massive data sets, we can start doing some really, really large-scale studies without having to rely on, a bunch of offices partnering together or a school sponsoring something. A good example of this is, as a long-term vision of what we're trying to build is, let's say we want to do an official study on the effects of adjustment on ear infections in children, right? So we decide that's the topic, we want to cover it. We want to say we want to actually put together a large-scale study. I'm going to project that ChiroHD's has 2,000 or 3,000 offices at this point that we're running our software in, and so we've got all this data set in here, and so we'll do something. I'm getting excited. So
I love it.
But so what we do is we set up parameters just like you would any other study, right? So we say, look, we want to study this in kids between the ages of 2 and 3. They have to have had at least 5 or 6 ear infections in the last year, and we can separate data groups and say we need a group that's been to the doctor and had antibiotics. We need a group that's never been treated. And so we kind of build out our data model and our data sets and say this is what we want. And we push it out to all of ChiroHD. And as you bring in those patients and they fill out their intake paperwork and the parents just fill out their normal stuff, it's going to flag that office and say, hey, we're participating in a data, in a study on this subject right now. This person happens to match that the study requirements, and here's what we want you to do. We want you to adjust them at least once a week. We go through the requirements of exactly what we want as part of the study. We have special SOAP notes that are pre-populated for this particular study that we ask extra questions on. But the offices have the ability to like opt into that and be involved in being a part of that study. And at the end of it, we've got data from thousands of offices, multiple franchises, different ways people practice. But it's in a way that is uniform and in a way that is much more similar to data sets that most medical studies look at, right? So I could turn over and say, here's data from the last year from 2,000 offices instead of, your typical chiropractic study right now. How many, it follows 30 people over the course of 6 months.
Right.
And so that's a huge part of it. And as that continues to progress and grow, the ultimate goal for me is not just for our own purposes, where we can start really showing where we have improvements and where we don't have improvements, honestly, just being very subjective about what is working, what isn't working. But my ultimate goal is to then allow access to those data sets to universities and other people that are doing large-scale studies on this stuff, where you've seen a lot about text neck right now, right? So everyone's talking about the effect of us looking down all the time and things like that. And there's secular universities that don't care about anything about chiropractic or alternative health or anything like that would be extremely interested in the data that we could offer them. And so we find that there's these studies that are happening, and we can expose that data in a way that's HIPAA compliant and EHR compliant, and give them access to years and years and years of data across hundreds of thousands of patients, and just let them query it and find their own trends and things like that. And so big data is my life. I mean, that's why I'm in software. That's a huge part of what I do outside of ChiroHD. And so taking big data and using it to help further the chiropractic profession in a way that is objective and can really validate what you guys are doing is everything that I'm about.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. I couldn't love it more. I wrote down a couple things while you were talking because I was trying to keep up with everything you were saying, because it's really exciting. It's really fun. I had a conversation, and this is also the cool part of doing this, is like I get to have conversations with all of you guys who are absolutely amazing people and brilliant. I had a conversation with David Fletcher, who's with Insight CLA Scanning, and they have, a ton of data from Insight scanners and everything like that, and they're doing research for pediatric chiropractic. And so to hear this from you, and to hear this from, a CEO and a founder of an EHR company and software is huge, because you're not in it just for, because it seemed like a good business opportunity, right? You're in it because it matters. It matters that there's a good software out there for people to use, and not only to get people into the office, but also to, encourage chiropractic to get to the masses that is the public, right? And say, hey, we have this, we are this, and we can say that with confidence. Thanks to people like you, thanks to people like David Fletcher, and all of the great things you guys are doing. So I love this. I love this initiative. I can't wait to see it take off in the next couple of years. It's gonna be amazing. And then I wrote down a couple things. Number one is the fact that, my understanding from it, and it's a very basic understanding of it, because I'm not in, big data, but I love marketing and advertising and all that stuff, because I love the fact that, you and I can have this conversation right now. And, if ChiroHD were running, Facebook ads, say, or, Zappos was, and they heard you say shoes, I'd probably see some sort of shoes on my Facebook account when I got off of this. But it's the fact that data points and analyzing and collecting data helps your software get smarter, meaning, not only the machines and the AI behind it, but also you guys as like, okay, where's the hiccups? Where are the lags here? What is going on? Why is this not populating as fast as it should? What is, what's happening there? What questions are we not asking that we should be asking? Blah, 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 all of that stuff. So it helps the actual software get smarter, but it also, with you bringing in, chiropractic research, and everyone's about chiropractic research right now, it helps chiropractic get better. And who doesn't want that? I mean, like, for Pete's sake, like, who wouldn't want chiropractic to get better, in the sense of, we have this data, we are going to use it to benefit all of chiropractic. And like you said, help schools out who are looking to, sift through some of this stuff and say, hey, here are some trends that we're seeing, and draw some conclusions for the chiropractic profession, would be massive, would be absolutely huge and very impactful. So I applaud you for that. The last thing I wrote down from that conversation was a big word that I know is probably going to come up and is in my head, so it's probably in multiple people's head, is the fact of privacy. And so we gotta have that conversation. And you probably know way more than I do, because I'm not in this field. But it's as we said, it's a buzzword that people, just like clouds, it's a buzzword. My privacy's, being hacked, my data's being hacked, all of this stuff. So I want you to have some time to say, hey, here's what we do, here's how we protect that. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, so there's a lot to privacy, obviously, and so I mean, like you said, I know more about privacy after the last 2 years of being in this world than I ever cared to know, right? And so, but privacy also impacts the work that I've been doing the last 7 years, advertising. We mentioned that stuff. There's actually some really fascinating things around privacy on that just worth mentioning. We mentioned all the creepy stuff. There's a huge amount of legislation and laws and things in place about, we can know everything about you except for who you are, right? And so, like, we have to be extremely careful about what we store about you, so that we might be able to send you over to a bid site, and they can know literally anything and everything you could possibly ever want to know about Johnny, but except for the fact that he's the legendary chiropractor, right? Like it's not that we can't know. And so, like, I mean, there's a lot about data that people just don't understand a lot about. I mean, if you don't live in this world, you're not going to understand it. It's not from ignorance or anything like that. It's just that there's so much around it, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a couple big pieces that I'll mention. The first one is, people hear cloud and they get super scared right out the gate, because they're like, well, it's more susceptible than having a server in the back of my office. And while there's some things that are accurate to that, for the most part, it is completely inaccurate, because generally speaking, when it comes to cloud-based applications, you're leveraging technology not just from ChiroHD, but we leverage other technologies to ensure privacy and protection of your data, right? So right now, ChiroHD is primarily built on Amazon Web Services, who currently holds about 40% of all cloud data. And so we leverage a lot of their infrastructure in terms of protection and privacy and backups and HIPAA compliance and EHR compliance. They have a huge, massive ecosystem of all of those things available to us that we didn't go build, right? So it's not like we went out and built an authentication system and figured out how to encrypt all your data. And like, I mean, we leverage the things that are being used across all industries in order to do that stuff. And that's how that industry works. Software, a big piece of software is what we call open source, right? It's where the community comes together, they build something that's available to everybody to use, but you get a lot of people in on it, and it just gets better and better and better. And now you don't have to go and spend 3 years on a PhD in encryption to be able to encrypt your database and protect the data that's in it. Right. So we're leveraging a huge ecosystem of technology that's out there to make sure that we protect your data. And so conversely, when you have your server sitting in the back of the office, really the only thing that's stopping someone from accessing that data is your firewall. And most people don't know anything about firewalls. They don't you probably don't even have your firewalls enabled. And it's the only thing that makes it more secure is that you're less of a target, right? Because someone has to be targeting you specifically, or they have to be targeting something where they're looking for something very particular to find. Whereas if you're in a cloud architecture, and I've got thousands and thousands of offices' data, it's a more alluring target for someone to target, which is the big difference there. But that being said, there's a lot of things around EHR in general in terms of how we have to store the data. It's got to, it's not even us that are putting these requirements in place, right? It's there's legislation, there's common sense, all these different things. But basically, I mean, your data is as protected as it's ever going to be with us, and you're leveraging. I promise you, I am much more concerned about the privacy of your data than you are, because if it goes south for me, it's going south in a big way, real fast.
Right.
A lot of offices, and so it is one of our top concerns is protecting your data and making sure that it is aligned to EHR laws, that we are doing everything in our power to make sure that it is protected in a way. And I promise you are not taking that level of concern with the server in the back of your office.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm glad. I'm happy we were able to break that barrier down, because I was thinking it, and I was like, this has to be a hot topic. So I'm glad you were able to say something about that, because I don't, like you said, a lot of people, including myself, don't really get the big picture of data and data compliance, and especially in the EHR and the medical record field. It's very, it's kind of the same, but it's different with like the encryption and everything like that, where there are, like you said, legislation even behind how data can be stored, data can be shared, data can be used and analyzed and everything like that. So I'm glad you were able to mention something about that. Last topic, how software plays a role in the chiropractic practice. And I mean, if I'm being honest, I think we've covered a lot of how it can, but if you have anything that you'd like to say, because after this we're going to go into closing remarks. So yeah, if you want to share anything on how else can it be a vital piece of software for a chiropractor in practice, go for it now.
Yeah, so I mean, there's so much to unpack on all this stuff, and so I'll try to keep it short and short and sweet, and to the points that are actually really impactful and important. The first big one I'll bring up is, and this is a big thing that'll come up for anyone that's familiar with the Mac versus PC battle, right? So those two big things, if you are familiar with that, it's not quite as big of a thing as it was 10 years ago, because Mac has pretty much dominated since then, other than a few certain markets. But when it was a really big thing, I mean, there was commercials about it, Mac putting out all those Mac versus PC commercials with the two people that were portraying, Mac is hip and cool, and the PC guy is an old, overweight, like that whole concept. But one of the things that came up that was a big thing in there is this concept of what in software we call opinionated versus unopinionated, right? And so what that really means, without getting too much into it, is just that one of the big differences between Apple products and PC products in general is that Windows is very open to let you do whatever you want. Like you can, if you know how to get behind the scenes on that, like you can tweak and do anything and everything. And if you want to customize it and you really want to pull the whole thing apart, you can customize and do anything you want. Whereas with an Apple product, things are a little more tightly coupled. You don't have as many options. It's a little more controlled. They have an opinion about how your computer should run and how things should work, and so they enforce that through a lot of different things. And so I will say this about ChiroHD is that we take an opinionated approach to software, and not in a way where we're controlling and we're saying this is how you need to run your office, but it goes back to your point about analytics, right? Is that we run right now, we're currently, to just give you some numbers, we're running in about 50 offices right now, as we're getting through that beta phase. And those offices go from brand new offices that are just opening to offices that are seeing 1,000 patients a week, right? So we've got that whole gamut of patient range, and we're taking that all the time and looking at how is the software impacting the office that's just coming in and they're only seeing 10 patients and they're all new patients, versus the office that's got 2 doctors and they're running 1,000 patients a week through their practice, and how can we improve those efficiencies. And as we learn that stuff over time, then we're building a certain workflow into the software that says, look, we've made an opinion that this is a really good workflow, and we've seen it work over and over. And we're always adapting. Like you said, we're a data company, right? So we're taking that data, we're looking at how to improve the flow of your practice, and we're taking that not just from your practice, but we're talking to other franchises. We're a franchise-based software. We haven't gotten into that at all, but the software is built in mind with opening multiple practices and being able to quickly turn on a new practice. But we've got 3 or 4 franchises in our office right now. We're talking to another 2 franchises. It's a franchise is a big thing, and as we take all the data from all those different places, we form our own opinion about how you can more efficiently run your practice, and we try to build those workflows into what we do.
Yeah.
Now, not to say that you can't customize things and you can't change things based on how you practice, but the idea there is that we really want to be a partner in you being a successful chiropractor and having a successful practice, so that you can see more people and you can impact more lives. That is part of our goal. And so we want to be a partner. We want to be not just your software company that you bought and you handed all your money over, and now it's a pain in the butt to call support and you never get someone on the phone. We want to be a partner in that. And so when you come to us and you say, hey, this particular thing is inefficient, we reach out to other offices and we find out, hey, is this a common thing? Is this a training problem? Is this something that we need to improve our workflows on? Things like that. And so really, I will just say that we, as a pillar of our company, we want to be a partner in your office. We really want to make sure that your office is running as efficiently as possible at the volume you want it to run. And we're going to use the data that we get from that to improve everybody's practices.
Yeah, awesome. That sounds great. And before I ask you for closing remarks and tips and tricks for students to better get in touch with you, coming out of the gate, running ChiroHD in these brand new practices that are going to be absolutely fabulous, I want to thank our last few sponsors here, and then we'll come back and you can share that information with us. Dr. Stu Hoffman, founder and president of ChiroSecure Malpractice Insurance, is the foremost expert in both risk management and risk avoidance. Understanding the everyday challenges of today's practicing chiropractor and the current public perception of chiropractic has made ChiroSecure the fastest growing malpractice insurance program of the last 28 years. Find out more at chirosecure.com. The IFCO is here to support you. Whether you are a chiropractic student, doctor of chiropractic organization, or member of the public, the International Federation of Chiropractors and Organizations is here for you. They recognize and support your right to practice and receive vertebral subluxation-centered chiropractic care, and are here to ensure that right and spread access to that care throughout the world. Head to ifcochiro.org/legendary for more. Be sure to give our friends over at Chiro Hustle a listen. They are bringing together some of the biggest names in the profession and learning from the greats. Chiro Hustle creates a safe space where chiropractic leaders share their stories and their passions with the world. Let's get hustling by heading to chirohustle.com now. Thank you for allowing this brief disruption to take place. And now back to the program. Awesome. All right, we are back with Gabriel. Thank you all so much for tuning in, watching this episode, this extensive episode. I mean, it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun. We've gone through a lot. Be sure, if you are looking to open a new practice or transition your EHR software, to be sure to watch this video. Just see Gabriel's passion for not only the chiropractic profession, but also just data and software and building this stuff out for all of us to utilize it more efficiently and effectively within our chiropractic practices. So I highly encourage you to do that. Gabriel, closing remarks here. Talk to the students specifically about, what do they need to do to better get in touch with you and get ChiroHD running in their offices?
Yeah, I mean, so I mentioned earlier, our passion is really to capture the next generation of chiropractors and really make sure that what we're building, it meets that market and does it in a way of what you expect from technology. So we've already done some things, and we're going to continue to push the envelope on this for sure. But we already have a system in place for new docs coming out, especially those that have just graduated. Where we waive all startup fees and you get the first 2 months free for any student that's coming out of chiropractic college, and we hope to extend that to even further than 2 months at some point. But the entire purpose that we want there is we want it to be super easy to come right out of school, start it up, and get through those first few months of having a practice without having just that massive overhead of just one more thing that you've got to think about, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's a big part of it. Another thing that I'll just mention real quick on that is pricing stuff. We've tried to make our pricing extremely simple. If you go and look at other software companies, not just chiropractic, but any software companies, sometimes it takes you, an hour of reading to figure out how much you're really going to pay at the end. Ours is super straightforward. It's a flat monthly rate. There's no hidden fees. There's no add-ons for other things. It is what it is. And so it just, as you're looking for that, make sure you evaluate those things. And then the last piece I'll just mention on new students is just spend the time, right? So and actually look into what you're buying, because reach out to companies, talk to people, ask to talk to someone. Don't just read their websites. I mean, ask to talk to someone. Ask some of the questions we've talked about here today. How are you handling privacy? You'd be surprised that some companies might not know the answer to those questions. So know what you're getting into, because it's a long-term decision, and you really need a partner in this, because it's after you open your practice, it's the last thing you want to think about. And once you've made that decision, it's really hard to make another decision. So just know what you're looking for. As far as reaching out to us, you can always visit our website at ChiroHD.com or email us at sales@ChiroHD.com. We'll be putting up a 1-800 number on our site in the very near future. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/ChiroHD. My name, you can probably reach out to me directly, but I mean, we're always available to, like I said, we want to partner with you guys. We want to make sure you're running your offices efficiently, and we're there for any questions you have.
Awesome. I absolutely love it. This was an absolute honor and pleasure to sit down with you tonight, Gabriel, and be on the podcast, beyond this season 4 of the Legendary Chiropractor podcast. Again, for those listening, watching later, doing whatever, and watching currently, the links are all at the bottom of the screen. So facebook.com/ChiroHD, as well as ChiroHD.com. You can head there. All of their pricing is there. All of their contact information is there. And like you said, they're very responsive on Facebook as well. And so if you're looking to partner with an EHR software company, this is you got to do this. I mean, you'd be a fool not to. And we actually have a comment from Taylor McLean, who's graduating and opening a practice in North Carolina called French Broad Chiro, and he will be opening with ChiroHD as his EHR software, him and Haley Parker. So I'm super stoked for him and them. So all of you, thank you for watching tonight. Thank you for tuning into the Legendary Chiropractor podcast, and thank you so much for all of the love, all the support, and all of the generosity that you guys show myself, show the sponsors, and make this show honestly possible. And so I want to encourage you to head to thelegendarychiropractor.com as well to check out everything chiropractic that you could ever want. And you can get all of the sponsor goodies up in the description above in that link that literally says sponsor goodies. And you can check out all of the things that the Legendary Chiropractor does, all of the services that we have, and all of the amazing platforms that we are currently running as a small startup chiropractic company. So it's a lot of fun. Gabriel, thank you so much for being on. And go Atlanta United. The game starts in about 3 minutes. So I know you and I are both like, let's go, let's go, let's go.
Yeah, I'm heading down to the game. I'm hanging up here. I got my jersey in the car.
Oh, you're amazing. You're amazing, Gabriel. Well, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your efforts in this chiropractic profession. And say hi to Dr. April for me. And have a blast tonight, and be safe.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Gabriel. Have a great night.